Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Sharon Bonney. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the Coalition on Adult Basic Education, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to National Apprenticeship Week, celebrated through COABE. And of course, we're here with our Behind Every Employer podcast, which we've tweaked a bit for National Apprenticeship Week. So I'm going to turn it over to our host, Jeff Abramowitz, and he's going to share a few words with you and kick us off. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you. And hi, everybody. It is National Apprenticeship Week. We are getting off this Monday morning, just rocking and rolling, but there's so much going on this week around the country. And I think we need to set the stage of why apprenticeship is so important and what this is all about. Like, why are we here? What are we talking about? We're going to have some great guests today that are going to get into the weeds about apprenticeships. But I think that we have to start with this, that according to the Department of Labor, 93% of people who complete a registered apprenticeship are employed upon completion. That's first thing. They're gonna not only are they completing the program, but their average wage is $77,000 annually. Additionally, employers generally earn about $1.44 for every dollar that they invest in a registered apprenticeship program. The National Apprenticeship Act of 2023 is just amazing. This week, the theme for National Apprenticeship week is superhighway to good jobs, and that's really what apprenticeships are all about. It's about how we take our adult learners, we get them smarter, move them into a position where they can get skilled and then off and running onto a career pathway of not only good jobs, but true careers. So we have a bunch of rock stars with us today. The very first one I want to bring in is my partner in crime, Anson Green. Anson and I have the Behind Every Employer podcast, and we've been doing that for quite some time. Anson, how are you?
I'm doing great. How's everybody else doing here?
We're all doing good. We're all doing good.
Great.
We're looking forward to talking apprenticeships, and I know this is it's right in your wheelhouse as well.
Oh yeah.
You not only traveling and speaking around the country, you get to see them in action, but we're going to be counting on you today to give us some insight and things that you see
Right.
from behind the scenes. We're
Fantastic.
also Yeah, we're also really excited to have two other guests with us today. Jeff Arnott's with us today, and Jeff's going to be talking to us about apprenticeships and what's going on in Florida. And super excited to have Miller Electric Company in the house and Terrance Freeman joining us today. We're going to be getting into all the great work that's being done from that end. So I'm going to be quiet because we need to talk apprenticeships, and we only have about an hour today, but a lot to talk about. A lot to talk about. So I want to kick us off, and maybe Jeff, you can kind of get us going on all this. Um, Before we talk about a specific and we start looking at the Miller Company, the great work they're doing, Jeff, can you set the stage? What's happening with apprenticeships around the country right now?
Yeah, I can tell you what's happening mostly is there's this, I don't want to say it's a disconnect, but I think it's just people need to get together. There's this whole thing that school districts and maybe adult ed programs in particular have an idea of what apprenticeships are. And many times I think they just need help on, where to go. Who do they talk to? Do they talk to the college? Do they talk to the employer? Do they talk to the Department of Labor? So it's a little bit of that. There's really no I guess you could say printed, not in Florida anyway, a printed guideline that tells you how to get down that path. And then employers, sometimes they just start their own programs, which is great. But they could also rely a lot of times on school districts and colleges for pipelines, not only into their programs, but really to maybe look at investing in some pre-apprenticeship programs where I think that is the perfect lane for adult education providers. And I know in Miller Electric in Jacksonville, I was intrigued by them when I went to an event in Tallahassee. I've known they've always been a good company that's based all over the Southeast United States and even creeping up into the industrial Midwest a little bit. But some of their work, they were already doing some great apprenticeship work with some unions. And one of their head apprenticeship guys who couldn't make it today, Danny Van Sickle. Actually, I've known this guy for years, and then find out he was actually one of the lead people for that. And then he started talking about how he partnered with school districts and adult ed programs, almost fainted and passed out. just because of the fact that not many people are doing that on their own in Florida. So I just wanted to commend Miller Electric. And then Terrance, I got to meet Terrance through a friend of mine here in Orlando, and it just kind of blossomed into that. And I'm helping them out with trying to go after some grant money to really start some apprenticeship programs in unique fields. When you think Miller Electric, you may just think the power company or thinking of putting in some wiring. They do that, but they also do so much more. And I'll pass the football on.
Yeah. So Jeff, before we pass it on to go to Terrance for a second, I'm curious, we have some people probably they're gonna be watching us that maybe have never done an apprenticeship before. Can you just kind of walk us through, like, what does the model look like from the student end or perspective of the employer and just the whole system? What does it look like?
Sure. Yeah, it's basically a learn to earn model in which the either the employer or the education agency is doing some what they would call basic training or related industry training. Usually in the evening, maybe sometimes on the weekend, sometimes online, sometimes a little bit of both. There's so many different models they can do it, and usually it's set with a time, a number of hours that's set by the state. And for instance, in Florida, most of the related instructions around 140 to 150 hours. And then most of the time, they're actually learning while they're earning, whether on the job site. They'll have like a master apprentice or a mentor that'll actually work with that employee as they learn these specific trades. And at the end of the day, they get some industry credentials along the way in most situations. And then they earn what is called a state of Florida journeyman's license, which actually comes from the Department of Ed in Florida. Some places it comes from the Department of Labor, sometimes it comes from the Department of Ed. And then that person is a master in that field. And that usually that certificate is good everywhere you go. Every major employer would know what that is. And the good news about apprenticeships, a lot of folks think it's just the trades, but it's more than the trades now. They're actually we're starting to see them in healthcare. Even the state of Florida is doing one for school teachers now through the University of Florida, which I thought was pretty unique. So it is starting to spread out a little bit. Now, my personal history with apprenticeship programs is I am proud to say that I had the first pre-apprenticeship program for an adult ed program in the state of Florida, and it was a lot of contractors in the area looking for employees. So we came together and came up with the idea. Worked with the Department of Ed. They said, "Yeah, you can do it." Just as long as you have a sponsor company. Now, if you do a pre-apprenticeship program, you do have to have a corporate sponsor. And we had a few in the Central Florida belt that were willing to sponsor us. It was a multi-employer one and really worked out well. I could tell you the folks that finished that program also got those EFL gains and all those NRS completions and all those wonderful things that are needed and so forth like that. So yeah, and it turned out to be a true success. And there's a lot of school districts now in Florida that adult ed programs that are doing pre-apprenticeship programs in their programs. And of course, youth apprenticeship programs are starting to take off as well. Those are mostly based in high schools. And I know Miller works with some high school kids up in the Jacksonville area as well. So
Awesome. So I want to, and Anson, feel free to jump in. I know you got a lot of experience in this field, and especially with employers around the country. I wanted to introduce Terrance Freeman. Terrance, you're with Miller Electric Company. Can you tell us a little bit about how did you get started in the apprenticeship with the apprenticeships at your company, and a little bit about Miller Electric and what kind of work you do?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me on. Miller Electric, we are a third generation owned company. Been around for about 100 years with about 3,000 employees. Safe to say about 70+% of those are in the field, and then the rest are office professionals. One of the things that really captured my attention when I got to Miller, it was their desire to make sure that the workforce was sustainable. And we talked about trades, and what I learned quickly, and I transitioned to Miller from the world of education first. I was a principal for 14 years and been in corporate America, and then also worked in city government. But it was one of those generational things where grandfather passed on to father passed on to son. And so that skill was kind of just held within this small little network. And we know that model is not sustainable. So Miller was very intentional, from our leadership all the way down to us on the workforce development team, of really trying to find ways to create that workforce pipeline. One was partnering with our ETA, and we heard Jeff talk about Danny Van Sickle, which is our Electrical Training Alliance. And they did an amazing job of really pushing out through a 5-year program, what we like to say from a job that leads to a career, getting them out into the field. But then there was a void of how do we get them to the office for those who want to be office professionals, those who want to be project managers and go on to be vice presidents, which, we're proud to say that many of our vice presidents in our company are 20 plus, 30 plus years that veterans are employees that started as an apprentice and worked their way from the field all the way up to leading one of our areas and verticals. So we do it with the apprenticeship program, but then we partner with organizations like Jeff. We partner with another group with Charlie, Cornish, and Nick called Apprenticeship Work. And we were just intentional in saying we need help in developing an in-house way of attracting, developing, and mobilizing our own talent that we have. So of those 3,000 employees we have and 75% out in the field, how many do we have currently within our own fold that we can upskill either through our own efforts or through partnering with organizations, creating an apprenticeship program that then they can come internally in-house and be more productive for the company, which obviously impacts the bottom line.
How many apprentices have you had at Miller Electric?
So that's a like a 2-part question, right? Because we partner with our local union, and so we will hire all of the graduates that choose to come to Miller through our Electrical Training Alliance. So we will have a lot of apprentices that are coming through from the field side. We are now venturing into the professional side. So you're talking about virtual design construction. You're talking about business intelligence. We just started an in-house business intelligence apprenticeship program, and we're currently working on a PCOG grant so that we can grow even more so in the technology and the cybersecurity space. I would say we had our first class of 5 graduate a year ago. I think we just had another 3 or 4 that are currently going through it, and we're looking to continue to expand that.
Wow, just great stuff. Anson, I'm curious if you could add to this. Is there stuff that Tyson's doing or things that you've seen in the field when it comes to apprenticeships that's kind of similar to what Terrance and Miller Electric's doing?
Yeah, I'd love to say a few words here, and happy to join this great group. I've been involved in apprenticeships in so many different ways over the years that I've really been able to see it grow and expand from something that was pretty narrowly scoped 20 something years ago, to something that I feel like has really broadened in terms of industry sectors. Healthcare and teaching and other things have been kind of folded in. This used to be kind of like the trades, and that was it, man. That was the apprenticeship scope that you really saw so much of in some manufacturing. The piece that I think has really brought value to the apprenticeship world and helped apprenticeship as well as help the adult education world is this whole concept that I feel like I've seen evolved in my career of the pre-apprenticeship model. I know when I first got involved in apprenticeships, probably 20 years ago, there was always this kind of difficulty of turning people away because they didn't have the requisite skills to enter the apprenticeship. They needed more math skills or whatever, and they were really good candidates except for that. And there wasn't a good attachment model for like, okay, what can this individual do to kind of build that math skill up or whatever it happens to be and come back in and reapply. And while all this was happening, adult education, as some of y'all know, was becoming much more broadened in terms of focused on work and focused on employment related skills. And so I've been so encouraged to see apprenticeships grow and expand, but also that the adult education world has been able to come in and kind of backfill and provide a kind of stronger pipeline of eligible candidates that have the fresh skills that are needed to become kind of bona fide, entry level apprentices. So that's one innovation that I think when we think of the adult education world, bringing in and kind of marrying up those two worlds, and we've seen the federal government get behind this, put funding out on this. So that evolution to me has been just very, very encouraging. And because our workforce has become much more diverse, much more language diverse, and the trades and apprenticeships need to benefit from that pool of workers, because if you don't have a pool of eligible apprentices, and helper level workers coming in, you're you're never going to have the outputs that you need for the actual upskilling that needs to happen to reach up into the journeyman level of skills and stuff. So I'm happy to hear this conversation happening and happening for hearing just all the events planned for Apprenticeship Week this week.
It's interesting. I think we're seeing this, Anson, in part because that more and more companies have labor demands.
Yep.
There's more jobs right now out there than there are people to fill them.
Yep.
And I guess more and more companies are jumping on board. Jeff, I was wondering if you might be able to help us. Like, how hard is it to convince companies today to kind of begin to test the waters, to begin that pre-apprenticeship program or that apprenticeship program? What are you seeing as you talk to employers and also adult literacy agencies and bringing them into the circle on all this? Oh, you're muted, Jeff.
It doesn't
There you
take
go.
much at all, I can tell you that. Really, when you start talking workforce, and especially when you bring in adult education, and you tell folks, a lot of people throughout, well, this is definitely a Florida thing too, and Texas is the same thing we have here. When we start talking about adult education students, many people in the community don't realize that we have hundreds and thousands of people who are ESL that have some skills already. And they look at that as like, wow, I didn't know you had that many people ready to go to work now. So it's just getting out and about and just talking. In fact, I even wrote a few notes here on if you wanted to get involved in the pre-apprenticeship programs and start them, take a few months, get out there, know the rules, understand what the reporting rules are to see if you could get some funding that away from your state. I know that's different from place to place. And literacy groups, I know that's a completely whole different landscape there. But also talk to your school district and your college if you are employed by one of them, if you're thinking about getting into it. So you can go ahead and get the conversation going. I've never met a college president or a superintendent who did not want to enhance workforce education in the United States anywhere. But in fact, they would be more excited more than anything else. But yeah, go ahead and get the excitement going because they may have contacts through the chambers. They may have contacts from just conversations they've had out on the street. So you definitely want to get them involved. And also go ahead and start looking at your system and structuring your system ready to take it on. So companies don't have to wait 2 or 3 years for you. Make
Right.
sure that you're ready to rock right off the bat and stuff like that. So I think it's what it is. I always, when I was a local program director, I made sure I hired the best people around me to take care of the bureaucracy so I could get out there and just work in the community and have a lot of breakfast with workforce directors, with businesses. I like to eat, so I didn't mind going to breakfast every morning, just so forth like that, and get to know people like Terrance and Glenn here in Orlando and a few things like that that really just open up the doors for your program. And if you get in there, make sure you swing and swing hard and get a home run right off the bat, because then that's where the real relationships work because they're testing you, they're seeing what you got. But if they see that your organization, your adult ed program has that, yeah, there's the seems like the vaults will open up, and then there will be more opportunities there. And I know folks mentioned grant money and so forth. There is tons of money. I know Terrance brought on the PCOG grant. That's a Florida grant, so I figured that question will be coming on. What's a PCOG? I want that. Well, if you're in Georgia, you're not going to get it. It's a Florida thing. But there's one thing about it. It just shows you that our state government is investing in companies and school districts to try to get these apprenticeship programs up and rolling or expand them. So I guarantee you, in all 50 states, there's something out there to do that. And I know from the feds, no matter who's sitting in the White House, it seems like there's tons of money out there all of a sudden coming in for apprenticeship programs, and that's pretty good. So
yeah, just to add on that, we're going to talk money in a little bit, but the the Apprenticeship Act of 2023 authorized $400 million for fiscal year 2025 and up to $800 million up through 2029. There is a lot of money flowing down, targeting apprenticeships at the federal and also at the state levels that we're seeing. I want to go back a second to Terrance, because Terrance, before we talk money and whether it's worth it all, one of the frustrations we often hear from employers is, man, apprenticeships got to be complex to kind of navigate, got to fill out all these forms and like, we're all confused. Like, is it really worth it for us? You got a good audience today, really diverse of educators, employers, everybody that's listening to us today. Can you just tell us a little bit about your experience at Miller? What was it like as far as actually navigating the apprenticeship to get it so that it was a useful tool for you and you're bringing talent in and actually retaining talent?
Well, and then thank you for that. I'll say first, it starts at the top, and having our leadership fully invested in this idea of we have to find ways to create. And I loved hearing it earlier, the pipeline for our workforce development, feed into our apprenticeship program, one, and then two, what resources do we have within our own ranks currently that we can upskill? So in our office, it was Patty Keenan, our chief talent officer. The one thing that I will say is, yeah, it is tedious. There are a lot of steps and things that you have to do. Someone's got to own it. But I end by saying it is so worth it, because when I look at us a year and a half ago when this journey started, and I look at us where we are now, the one thing I always tell people when I go and talk about the apprenticeship program for us is it's hope. And a lot of times these jobs that we're trying to offer communities and offer people, it's not just a job, it's hope. We're offering an opportunity to break those cycles of generational poverty that they're facing. And so I look at where we started and I was like, man, there's no way we're going to be able to structure and organize to where we're at now through the partnerships and the relationships with other organizations. And I don't want to be on my soapbox here, but so many times these things were siloed and everyone was doing their own little thing. Mm-hmm. So, to see people like Jeff getting involved in the process, see people, organizations like Career Source here in Florida that are collaboratively trying to bring us all together so that we can share information. And if they want to be an electrician, awesome. If they want to be a plumber, a welder, that is fine with me. And what makes Miller unique, and I'll end here, is the fact that we have so many verticals. So we have an EV department now and looking to be one of the leaders. And we are leading in the nation right now when it comes to building EV charging stations and the technology for it. So we're out looking for engineers. So we are looking now to try to create a pipeline for students or for returning citizens to our community, or if we're talking about someone that is looking to upskill, there are opportunities to come work for us, industrial, healthcare, banking. So it's not necessarily just being able to wire and deal with electricity. There are other lanes that we have. So I'll close with saying it's worth it, but someone has to own it. And it's got to be something that every day we have a team of about 5 or 6 people. Every day we get up and we're working towards this goal of recruiting, retaining for our company.
I love it. You touched on so many different pieces there. One piece was the returning citizen or justice impacted person. And one of the things that we don't see enough of across the country is engagement in the pre-apprenticeship and then apprenticeship piece, really targeting people that are justice involved in coming home. That's kind of the world that I live in. And I'm grateful that Miller has taken on some of that challenge. But the dollars and cents it comes down to is, does it pay? Does it pay? And I guess from Miller's perspective, at Miller Electric, what's your return on investment? Is it really worth it as a company to engage at that level and with these programs?
So far, the data is saying absolutely and yes. Now we are finding our ways to do as much work as we can within and our own, but there are times when we have to make that investment into bringing other organizations in to help us with grant writing or to help us structure the apprenticeship program. We have some internal data right now, and I was going through it as I was preparing for this call today, and then at the bottom of it, I saw confidential. So I was like, crud, because I so want to share some of the exciting things that I saw in that data. But I would just encourage companies, if you're looking to go in this direction, do it. because what I saw and what hopefully the store will be able to tell in the near future is it does pay off. There's not, I don't want to say there's sting to it, but there's doubt. I mean, if you're in the trade, the profession that we're in, you have so many people that have seen it done a certain way that all of a sudden, when you're introducing something new to a system like this, you'll find a little bit of a rub or challenge. But then when they see the work productivity of these apprentices that we're bringing in and the skill sets, and then how they're able to go out and amplify what we're doing as a company, meaning more jobs we can take on. I mean, there's so much work in the electrical construction industry right now, and we don't have enough staff. So the more we can bring in, the better position our company is to make more money, bigger bonuses.
One, we don't want to get you into any trouble today, so we're not going to ask you for any confidential numbers, but I will ask you this favor, that when your company is ready, people get involved in programs and projects like this because of the data, because we prove that it works, and apprenticeships is a tool that works. And if Miller would ever consider publishing their results, I think it'd be really helpful convincing other employers that are out there that they need to jump in the pool, that it could be beneficial for their company. So we hope that you'll keep that on your radar screen. Anson, from your perspective, we talked a little bit about from the company end, but Anson, everywhere you go and travel, you're bumping into students and teachers.
Yep.
And I'm curious from your in your experience of what you've talked to people about the apprenticeship model. What do you hear from our students, and what are you hearing from the instructors that are out there and the teachers that are out there?
Yeah, let me say a few words, and then I got to drop for another meeting here. But I would say the things that really jump out at me with apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeships is both from, shared by the students and the workers and the teachers themselves, is the structure. Apprenticeship is such a well-structured and established vehicle for career advancement. And when students benefit from structure, teachers like to align to structure, especially if you're talking about coordinating with an adult basic education program or something. And so, and then it provides our educators with access to employers. A lot of times when I talk to adult education and other educators, and they say, well, we can't build alliances with the business community. And I say, well, have you tried going through the apprenticeship door? Well, we're not an apprenticeship. I said, you don't have to be an apprenticeship. Find one. There's probably one at your college, or someone's involved in the apprenticeship program. Partner with them and align your services to build that pipeline towards the apprenticeship. So it provides, great structures for the teaching and learning and advancement and job growth for individuals, but it also provides good structures for the alignment of programs and access to employers. The last thing we want to give our employer partners is 5 people to talk to when they can talk to 1 or 2. And a lot of times that's what happens. And so getting aligned on that pipeline that the employer is already engaged in, which is the apprenticeship program, is a great way to get access and to provide that pipeline of skilled workers up into the apprenticeship model. So I'm going to jump off here, but man, I really appreciate it. It's been great to hear this conversation and see such a powerful week get started here for apprenticeships. Thank you all.
It's great to see you, and check out the Behind Every Employer podcast. You can get it on CoAbe, but you'll get to see Anson and I talk to some great people doing some great work around the country.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Anson.
Uh-huh.
I want to jump back to Jeff for a minute when we talk about education. So one of the things that I think we don't often think enough about is what Terrance talked about a little bit, was that pipeline of moving people forward from employment, not just to that entry-level job, but kind of moving them forward into that next level where they're really moving up at the company, even to a leadership role. Jeff, can you talk to us a little about that education piece? Sure. And how is education being embedded in, and how important is it for people on their journey to like this true career pathway?
Yeah, when you start in a pre-apprenticeship program or an apprenticeship program, one thing you have to do is definitely listen to the employers you're working with. Now, the good news with apprenticeship programs and pre-apprenticeship programs, the employers themselves kind of set the curriculum. It doesn't necessarily come from some state guidelines or something like that. If they want more math, because I know Anson just brought up the math thing, we'll put in some more geometry, things like that. And I build the apprenticeship program, the instructors in it. Now, sometimes the employer has the staff already on task. They're doing the related instruction, and that's just a whole lot of that's a different, easier. But if you're doing it in house, especially with the pre-apprenticeship program, you got to have the right teachers. You got to have somebody that really knows those skills that employer wants. Another key factor to this too is most apprenticeships I work with, they want some soft skills or they want some employability skills and so forth embedded in. I usually reach out to Career Source. That's our Department of Labor. I know Terrance just talked to them earlier. They usually have a group of people on staff that will help you with that will help you bring in the stuff that they want, and so forth like that. And I find that soft skills is more than just hiding your tattoos and pulling up your pants, and showing up to work on time. There's a lot more to that, about cooperation, working together, working in projects, those type of things. Skills that I think are maybe you don't have anybody on staff that can teach that particular thing, just to rely on outside sources. And another thing from the education pieces too, if you do partner with it, try to take some things off the employer's plate. I know Terrance and Jeff, you mentioned it too, all the paperwork, the bureaucracy, reporting. We call that rapids here in Florida. They have a federal and they have a state one. If you can help them take that off their plate and work with them to report that stuff, of course, with confidentiality agreements and all those other things like that. But if you can make that work, that's one thing that makes life a little bit easier for the employer themselves. And also make sure you have a match made in heaven, is the way I look at it. A couple, you have some co-teachers going, make sure those two teachers get along. I've had it before where they just didn't like each other. I had to put new teachers in there, and so forth. Make sure that you have a couple teachers that gelled well together, work well together. And that's very important, especially if you're going to have an adult ESL type of IET or pre-apprenticeship program, that there's to make sure that the teacher understands the language of the students and things like that. There's a lot of pieces to that, but I think that's the thing. Just make sure you have the good recipe and listen to the employer. I hear that a lot from employers all over the place. They say, we've tried this before, but the education people wouldn't listen to us. I can tell you, you need to listen to them. Period.
I love it. So I want to encourage people, if you have any questions, jump on, throw it in the chat box. I know Sharon's watching and moderating this too. She'll lean in. I'll try and follow along if there are any questions out there that you have. But yeah, you got two great experts on the call today, so let's take advantage. Terrance, I believe in stories. I think that people remember stories, and they're going to remember a lot about Miller Electric Company today. But I was wondering if there's anything that sticks out into your head of a story, maybe of an employee that you brought on into an apprenticeship program and what their pathway was like. Anyone stick out in your mind?
Oh wow, let's see. There's several that do, but what's one that I can actually tell the story in 30 seconds or less? That'll be tough. I will say this. So Daniel's one, and I started with Miller a year and a half ago now, and hearing his story, and we were celebrating his completion of our cybersecurity apprenticeship program. And hearing his story of how he said when he first started at work at Miller, and I'm assuming as an entry-level person, he would see people in this department and think that he could never be one of them. And then all of a sudden going through the apprenticeship program that we created internally, one, he said it was challenging, but he loved the fact that he had so much support from the coaches and so much support from Miller locally, having a sponsor, that it helped him get through it. But now that he's on this side of it, he's like, man, I would have never thought I would be here. And if not for that opportunity, my life and my family's life now is on a different trajectory. I mean, and that's just one of so many stories that I could share.
Terrance, I think one of the interesting things that you've recognized, I guess, is that an apprenticeship is much more than just what happens in work. It's helping people succeed in life. And when it comes to marginalized populations, and you're really getting our adult learners to stay in the classroom and to get into apprenticeships and to really engage, we have to understand that the classroom extends far beyond the four walls where we do our teaching, or the virtual rooms of the Zoom call. It actually goes into people's lives and really understanding it. And I think that employers play a crucial role in how people succeed in life and the career pathways that they have, but also recognizing. So one thing, I'm going to be honest with you, I did some stalking of Miller Electric because I wanted to do my homework before this, but I was just amazed at some of the great programs that you have for your employees, like really things that help them just in very basic needs, and support programs and recognition programs and incentive programs, the whole nine yards. And that to me is like a game changer when you get an employer that recognizes all of that. Was that intentional of Miller, and do they embed that in the apprenticeship programs as well?
Absolutely. We, in the beginning, we are a third generation company. And so when you look at our CEO, our chairman of the board, this company has been a part of their family for almost 100 years. And that is our culture. When we walk through the halls, and it's one of our core values. So when you talk about the resources that are provided, yes, from insurance to getting stock options when you come into the office, just so many things that, as I say, so many of the people that I've had the fortune to try to help do this thing we call life, they just feel like they're barriers that they would never be able to overcome. And when I'm able to go to someone and say, listen, if you're willing to entertain this pre-internship or this apprenticeship, and here's where it can lead, we pay for insurance. And then you have to make that number make sense to them. So I'll tell them, I said, listen, when I came, God blessed me with 5 kids. Okay. So I have 4 daughters and 1 son. That's where all my hair went. But the minute I came on at Miller, I look at them and I say, that was a $700 a month savings for me. I said, so you do the math. That's $8,400 a year that I now no longer have to pay. Plus you're going to get retirement. You're going to get your insurance. You're going to get retirement with benefits and pension. I said, these things you can't get if you're going to the box stores that are going to pay you a little more to start off. But 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, I know you're not used to looking at that life through that lens, but I'm going to help you see now. 10 years down the road, you can be a director or a vice president. Just like the 5 that are sitting in our executive suite right now that started off as apprentice with high school diplomas. They still do not have college diplomas, but they're making some of the biggest decisions in our company because of the years of experience that they have.
I love it. I love it. So we're going to ask both you guys this question, but one of the things I think that we've been talking a lot of good stuff, right? But I tend to keep it real with my audience and with behind every employer audience that listens. And I want to keep it real here also, because I don't think it's all a bed of roses. I think there's some challenges with apprenticeships as well. And let's be honest. So when you are working in the apprenticeship program, what are the things that kind of send the shiver down your spine a little bit and maybe aren't all that great that people should really expect, that they should be aware of before they jump into the water?
I mean, I'll gladly jump in with this. It's a challenge and a struggle for me. So when I started, one of the first apprentices that I brought in was a mentee. It was really an internship, but we were trying to pipe him into it. And I failed to realize that this was his first time coming into an environment like that. And so things that, when Jeff hit on it a little earlier, it's more than covering up your tattoos and pulling up your pants, right? But I think one of the challenges for a Miller, and if you go look at our trades industry and you go look at how many people are driving Miller trucks, how many people are doing on Miller job sites, it's not a reflection. We're tracking in the right direction, but it's not a reflection of our community. And so I think that there are a lot of times that there are barriers when it comes to race, when it comes to age, comes to ethnicity, when it comes to certain trades and professions, that I feel Miller does a great job of being intentional and trying to go to every zip code in our city and say, you can be a part of this opportunity. Going to every school. We do work in Baker County Correctional Institution, going everywhere and trying to meet people where they're at, because we understand that if we're going to be successful, our city has to be successful, and our city is going to be successful when the citizens of it all feel like they have an opportunity to earn income beyond just a livable wage and provide for their families.
I love
Yeah, I
it.
think, yeah, the
Jeff, give it a
biggest thing,
shot.
sure, the biggest thing I think, and Terrance, you definitely hit on a few of these, is when you take young students, especially I'm talking about the younger crowd, into a place that's an employer. Sometimes the employer, I have to talk to them a little bit and say like, hey, they at the end of the day, they're 18, 19-year-old kids at the end of the day, and so forth, and tell them it's not necessarily like generational. I mean, they called us Gen slackers and everything else is Gen Xers, and they called boomers hippies and all kinds of stuff. I said, we just kind of got to realize that we have to really work and make this happen. I tell them all the time that I can think of Publix, Chick-fil-A, and Walt Disney World. I can go to those three places and I see a whole ecosystem of 17, 18-year-old kids, professional, kind, nice, aim to please, get to yes. And all three of those places. So I know it can be done. So sometimes there is this perception that younger students, especially adult ed students, may not live up to their thing. But I think you can also reduce a lot of that too, as much you did, Jeff, is research the company itself. I was really, really excited to work with Miller when I really read about their involvement in the greater Jacksonville area. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they're involved with them and they're in some of their programs. Their training facility, Miller, I know, sponsors that. And they're involved in many different parts of the community in many different ways. So it tells me that Miller cares about Jacksonville and everything. And I went to their home office up there. Terrance took me on a tour, and there's one wall that really struck me. It's a wall of all these portraits of pretty much every president since HW, politicians, senators, first ladies, daughters of presidents, and everything else that have come through to tour this facility of both political parties, by the way, that really invested. You could tell that they are invested in their community. They want to engage in the system as well to try to do best for Jacksonville. Good news is Miller Electric is all over the United States, and I know Terrance and I may be working on some stuff here in Central Florida. So just throwing that out there. So and stuff like that. So there is a lot of good companies like Miller out there. When I heard that when I was approached by a side group and Terrance, I'm going like, yeah, I got to work with these people. This is a good people. It almost made me want to move back to Jacksonville because I was raised in the area. In fact, Terrance dropped the word crud. I haven't heard that in a while. That's definitely a Jacksonville term.
I love it. I love it. I'm curious from both of you. We have a little bit of time left, but not a lot. But I wanted to get your take on this, and that is, we have people that are on this call that maybe leaders in companies or leaders in adult literacy agencies and programs. I'm curious the advice that you would give them going forward. Like, what is it that you want everyone out there to know when you hear the word apprenticeship talked about in your employer or at your adult education center? Like, what is it that people should really be hyper focused on? And then I'll give you my take on it as well. But Terrance, what should they be looking at when we talk about apprenticeships?
Oh, I kind of operate by the 3 E's. You got to educate, expose, and empower. And so one of the biggest things for me is trying to just bring awareness. So if I were in the position of leading an adult literacy operation, and I've lived so many different lives, so I ran a child literacy organization for over a year or so. I really would try to continue to put information in front of them to find their interest, because I think another challenge that we have in this quest, and we try to say it's not a quantity thing at Miller, it's a quality. So if we have 5 or if we have 50, we want to make sure we can do it with excellence. Is one of the biggest mistakes I believe a company can make is trying to get to that quantity. So they bring in 100 people, but those 100 are not necessarily interested in it. And so I think the more you can do the awareness piece, and that's what Miller does, is we go to every school in Duval County. Every high school, we are in it at some point. We go to all of the construction career fairs around the state, And we may meet, I think I was in front of 3,000 students from January through May. I think maybe 3 of them or 4 of them ended up coming on board. And so it's one of those deals I would encourage them to do as much awareness as they can and to try to identify those who show the interest. If you have a budget like we do, where not that we can afford to swing and miss, but we can afford to really try to touch and impact the life in a meaningful way that may not choose us in the end, then by all means, yes, you can broaden that scope. But if, you're smaller and you're trying to get going, really isolate the ones that are interested.
Great words. Great. I love the 3 E's. I love the
Yeah.
3 E's. Educate, expose, and empower. Wow. Good stuff. Jeff, from your end, what do you want people to know?
I think as the program leader and the director of your programs, if you are a director or somebody in that thing, just keep a small group of people working on it when it comes to the community. Now, don't get me wrong. Everybody's involved with the community. I gave all my teachers business cards, all that stuff, because they're all an outreach element for you. But when it comes to this particular thing, make sure you'll have 2 or 3 people, including yourself, that knows a lot about apprenticeships and really builds those relationships with them, and so forth. And I always said, one of my biggest mentor, Dr. Deborah Pace, who was our superintendent, she used to always tell us, try to get to yes, try to get to yes. You might have to say no, but try to get to yes. And I think that's the thing too. Just work your way through all these things. And anybody who tries to say no, get them out of your way. Just get them out of your way completely. And I think those are the biggest things. And one thing that I noticed, that the Miller definitely is correct. Everywhere I've gone throughout the state of Florida to speak, I usually see Terrance or Danny Van Sickle or Patty, one of the 3 folks there, out promoting the programs and so forth. In Tallahassee, I've seen them in I don't know, I've seen them in Orlando. I've seen them everywhere. So they definitely do that. So definitely partner with those people that have good community relationships and are serious about taking your students on too.
Yeah, I think apprenticeships, like other models, I think about the IET model, which is really transforming our country now and taking hold, is the idea of a village, of really getting everybody to the table. And it's interesting, but in adult education, we often think of getting people to a benchmark, whether it's a high school equivalency or getting ready for post-secondary or wherever they're going to go, or even ESL. One of the things we don't often think about is teaching people what the needs of the employer that they want to work for, what is going to help them meet that need. And it's interesting too, because this is exactly does that. It allows the employer to teach the skill and educate the participant with what they really need to be successful. I'm curious, and Terrance, and you may not have the data, I don't want to get any confidences here, but I'm curious from a retention standpoint, do you notice that people go through your apprenticeship programs actually are staying with your company longer?
It's a great question. And again, you must have access to my emails. You're right on with it. I think one of the things that I would encourage companies to do is kind of what I'm watching us do, is not just being satisfied with attracting talent to your organization, not just being satisfied with developing that talent and amplifying it, but also retaining it. And one of the challenges I saw is a compliment to your company when, you've helped this employee develop, and now someone else wants to recruit them and pay them more. That's a compliment to what you've done. So it's really building that culture and understanding that as those apprentices continue to grow in their area of expertise, then the level of promotion, their ascension that we've been sharing with them, at least for me, I always share that here's where you're at, here's where I know you can go. And at Miller, I'm a coach as well at Miller. We have 2 or 3 staff employees that's our job, is where they're people going through the process that are in need of help and support. We go hand in hand with them. And we hope that by building that relationship, and I'm proud to say 2 of my 3 mentees got promoted in this last cycle, that we build such this bond that we feel like, hey, I don't want to work anywhere else. Not only did they allow me to come into the fold, but they also empowered me and educated me with, my tools and my talents. And then they compensated me fairly, if not above and beyond. Why do I want to leave? And that's kind of the goal.
I love it. That's awesome. I do think we live in this world of I call it diversity, equity, and confusion. But diversity, equity, and inclusion, and getting people into, and quite frankly, the apprenticeship tool is amazing. We had Anson Green and I did our last show from Behind Every Employer. We had people from Kawasaki on, and they were very intentional about talking about how English language learners and how they're embedding them into the workforce at Kawasaki and really teaching them and working with them. And it's really amazing to see. I think the apprenticeship model is a tremendous tool when you talk about ESL learners and getting them into the workforce and showing helping them show their value that they bring into the workforce for employers. We're talking about this village, and the village of apprenticeship is something that I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. Like, I don't think it is probably one of the least used tools nationally that can help people find a career pathway. We just need more Millers out there. We need to get we need to get you on a roadshow, Terrance, and get you into all 50 states so that we can share what the benefit of it is and what a great tool it is for employers across the board. So want to thank you for that in particular. We are in apprenticeship week, and this is an opportunity for people to learn about apprenticeships and the benefit of an apprenticeship program. Jeff, where can people go? What are the resources? I'm going to kick off the first one. I'm stealing it from you first, is COABE. COABE has some great resources and tools for you to understand the apprenticeship model and what's going on. So you got to get onto the website and check out some of the programs that we have. But Jeff, where can people they want to dive in and learn more? Where should they be going, and how can they reach you as well?
Sure. Yeah. I put my email and my phone number in the chat. So, and I'll say it here at the closing too. No, the biggest thing is go to your local Department of Labor or education state websites. And first of all, that's the first question you need to answer is, does the Department of Labor or the Department of Education handle apprenticeships in my state? It could be a combination, and I can't think of an exception, but there may be an exception out there, possibly in one of the 50 states or territories. So definitely look that up first and just really dive into those particular things. A lot of times, I know in Florida, they'll start listing out all the companies that sponsor apprenticeships throughout the whole state of Florida. So there's a good place to start, and just go in and have a conversation with them about pre-apprentices. Another thing is make yourself active and vocal. I will say that, and vocal and political when it comes to your chambers, your city governments. When it comes to state legislative session, you'll find out there's a lot of leads there too. I always go to all the chamber events. I always went to those. Career Source, I go to some of their meetings and so forth, and ask to speak at these particular things. They're always looking for speakers. So say, hey, I'd like to tell you about my adult ed program. Make sure that you are that sounding board to do that. I think that's the key. It's all about relationship building. Occasionally, you might hit the lotto and someone comes rolling into your door and wants to start an apprenticeship program, but many of these are started through just small conversations that turn into bigger conversations. So make it also know the companies, go ask them for a tour. They'll take you on a tour. They'll be more happy to do that. And then you can get some ideas and that's where you could really start doing some talking on their turf. I always find that going to their turf is a little bit better than coming to your own turf when it comes to starting these conversations as well.
Love it. I love it. Terrance, you're an employer and you're out there from the employer's perspective. Where should we be focusing out there? Where can we get some more information about how to do this well? And give us a little bit about how we can get some information on Miller and how they're doing their job.
Well, I'll start with the Miller one. You can contact me or Patty Keenan at Miller Electric. Just go to our website. I'm always willing, and Miller has an open door policy from our CEO all the way down, but always willing to take a phone call or reach out. And I'll just say, Jeff, I can't pretend like I'm reinventing the wheel. We lean heavily on experts like Jeff and others as we seek to explore different or better options to help us in what we're trying to accomplish in building our workforce out there. But the biggest thing that we've done over the last several years that I've heard is just really, we owned our backyard. Our senior director of workforce development, when you look at his calendar, I want to say there were 170 events on it last year. And it's just showing up. I mean, if a school has a function, I know for me in Orlando now, I've reached out to every high school, all the boys and girls clubs, you name the group, and I'll show up. And if it's donate, we have a fund, we have the ability to do that, but we support these organizations as well through sponsorships, because you said it earlier, Jeff, we want to be engaged in a part of the community. And if we earn that trust of the community, then by all means, we feel that they're going to trust us now maybe to come and work for us.
That's just awesome. I think for the longest time, that the Departments of Labor and Department of Education, they just didn't talk to each other very well. And now not only are they talking to each other, but they're in each other's houses. They're beginning to recognize that, we need to get people smarter with education, but that's also going to lead to career pathways where they're getting employed at places like Miller going forward. I would ask and suggest that people check out the apprenticeship.gov, which is our national apprenticeship page, which really can give you a lot of information. For the next 5 days, we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about apprenticeships, and there's just about every day, there's at least one major event going on regarding apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships and understanding women in apprenticeships. And I thanks Sharon for throwing the link on there. But yeah, even with veterans and federal employees, there's a lot for us to learn. And I think, again, we need to start educating the public about really what this is all about and how to engage. I also want to just mention, too, about an advocacy part of this, which is that, great tools like this that are out there, they grow and they become true things where they're impactful in society when we all advocate for them, when we stand up and when we share the stories. So as Miller does and other companies that are out there, if you have a success story that's coming through your apprenticeship, share it. Get it to COABE, www.coabe.org. Send it to us. We want to hear your apprenticeship stories, your success stories. We also want to hear about the things that are really working well in your program and your students and their awesomeness. So please, if you have those stories that are out there, get them to COABE. We'll make sure not only do we get them out to the field, but I think that it does a lot for a student to see that they're recognized for their accomplishments. And same thing with employers like Miller that's doing great work, getting them out there and recognized in the field. So we only have a few seconds left, but before we go, Jeff, I'm giving you, I always keep it on my desk, and I'm true, here it is. It's my magic wand, and I'm handing it to you virtually, so you got it. But if there was your magic wand, you're going to wave it over the field, and you want them to do this regarding apprenticeships, give it to us. What are you going to use that magic wand for?
No, I think just
besides giving you more business.
Oh, gotcha. Well,
that's
okay.
a natural.
Okay. No, I think the big thing is just to keep an open mind. Remember, apprenticeships were actually the oldest form of education that we've ever had. Now, all of a sudden, it's starting to come back and everything else. We've had all this stuff in between. I just went to an event in Louisiana, and they were talking about the average student to go through a degree program. It's like 8.9 years now for some folks. I'm thinking that's like the doctoral residency or something. Folks need to get to work pretty quick, and I think apprenticeships help that. It helps people to earn today, and pre-apprenticeships help students maybe get their hands, see if this is right for them, and IETs, which is, I think IETs and pre-apprenticeships are kind of the same thing, even though I know they're completely different, but it still talks about careers and all that type of stuff. At the end of the day, I think everybody wants a job and everybody wants a career and everybody wants a fulfilling career. So I think that's my magic wand. Let's help everyone get a good, successful career, period.
Awesome. Terrance, give it to us. You got my magic wand for a minute. What are you going to do?
See if I can create another hour to the day. There's just so much to do every day, so much good news to share with so many people in our community. If I had a magic wand, that would be one of the biggest things I do is create more time, create more opportunities. And then I would like to have an unlimited checkbook, banking account, so that we know one of the biggest barriers for the communities that I find myself having the honor of serving is access. And so when you look at a lot of these training programs and apprenticeship programs, is one of the limits is how do they get there? So if we're able to take our information to them, I think that's that's imperative for the success. And again, that's why I'm so grateful to work at Miller, that I'm able to go from Jacksonville to anywhere we have a branch office in the country, actually, and do workforce development. So
Awesome. Well, Terrance and Jeff, thank you so much, both of you, and thank you to Miller Electric Company for all the great work they're doing. You're definitely a role model that needs to be followed by more companies across the United States, and getting our adult learners smarter and getting them into the workforce and the careers. Jeff, thank you for your friendship as well as coming on today. I appreciate both of them. Appreciate both of those. If you want some more information on Apprenticeship Week, go on. The link is in the chat box for all the events happening, and you go on to coabe.org. And check out, if you're not part of COABE or you want to learn more, coabe.org, just an amazing organization and doing some great work across the country. Big shout out to Sharon Bonney and the staff at COABE for orchestrating this podcast, and Anson Green, my partner in crime with the Behind Every Employer podcast. I hope you'll check it out. And thanks, everybody.